Hello, everybody, and welcome to There's a Will, the show where you will find out where I am, which is right here. With me in the studio today, I have Anthony McFarlane Gonzalez.
No.
Finally in the studio.
I know, after so long, huh?
Now, anybody who's watched this show will know that usually we see you on a little box from some freezing igloo that you inhabit in northern Poland.
Everybody has been giving me a hard time about that.
Yeah. In Bydgoszcz.
No.
The lovely town of Bydgoszcz. I like it there.
No, it's very nice.
Yeah.
Quaint.
It has a river runs through it.
The cleanest river in Poland, by the way, to swim in.
Yeah. Is that right? What's it called?
The Brda.
The Brda, yeah.
Tak.
Yeah. And it starts up in the up to the north near Gdansk in the what's that called? Kashuba region, doesn't it?
Yep.
And then flows into the Vistula.
In the Vistula.
Right next to Bydgoszcz.
Tak, yeah. And because
Big grain center in the Middle Ages. Not a lot of people know that.
No, that's it used to be one of the main arteries, and that's where a lot of the Knights Templar of Poland here controlled it.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. And the biggest castle that was gorgeous is Malbork. And
Yeah,
that's
the
their
Teutonic Castle.
Teutonic,
which is,
nice.
they were crusaders. But the Malbork is supposed to be, if not the biggest, one of the biggest existing castles. So.
Tak, yeah, it's the biggest brick castle in the world.
The biggest one in the world, because they liked their bricks, the Prussians. They built it to last, didn't they?
Yes, they did, and that's actually interesting. That castle is a retirement home for the Teutonic Knights.
Ah, I did not know that. Yeah. Well, there you go. We have on the horn from Kiev, Patrick Patterson. Are you there, Patrick?
Yes. I am.
He's there. I knew you were there. I was just pretending as if there was a little bit of excitement, finding out if we would make the connection, because we were just talking so that people know that we do plan at least 5 minutes ahead, these shows.
We do.
Yeah. I've written the entire script. I hope you memorized your part for today's show, Patrick.
I didn't get it.
What? How are you going to know what to say? No. I scripted the whole thing. I spent 20 minutes yesterday writing this.
Dry humor, huh? Crickets.
Pretty dry, yeah? It's getting pretty dry out there. It's almost like Arizona. Okay. When last we met, you were on your way to Kherson, right? Did I say that right?
Correct.
Did I say that kind of right?
Kherson.
Yeah. Oh, you're not supposed to go Kherson?
Kherson.
Oh, okay. What's the K for then?
Like Kharkiv, like.
Right. Okay. So you can make a little bit, but not so much that you sound as if you're from a Bedouin or something. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'm surprised I can pronounce anything, being from Southeast Texas.
I know. The Slavic languages are very difficult for all of us. Even for Poles who never learned it, who are from the States, they find it difficult. Yeah. Like a guy we had a guest on here, you know Rusty, right? Of course.
Tak, yeah.
Antony knows Rusty. Trusty Rusty, the great aid supplier with the Davai Ukraine Australian syndicate, which has been supplying aid. And I don't know, they made about 4 dozen runs over there or something like that.
At a minimum.
Yeah,
at a minimum.
A lot of runs. Half 100 anyway.
Tak, yeah, him and his group.
Yeah, him and his group. And we were at the border crossing on the very first run. And I was speaking Polish to the border guard, and the border guard saw my passport and says, "Oh, American." And what is your? And he hands his passport Polish, and she starts speaking to him in Polish, and he doesn't speak Polish. She says, "This is strange. The American speaks Polish. The Pole does not speak Polish." I said, "That's the kind of war this is going to be."
Oh, mate, I did not know Rusty is Polish.
Yeah.
And a citizen Polish.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll have to get him over a piva on that one.
He's got relatives in the country.
No.
Yeah. Even though he's from Australia.
No, tak.
Should I apply for my card?
Yep. You can get it because you have, what, a grandparent?
My grandparents are from Poland.
Your grandparents were from Poland. Where were they from, Patrick?
I would have to look it up, but I believe Warsaw and Eastern Poland.
Eastern Poland, yeah. My favorite part, actually, generally. Yeah, I'm looking at Larry King with my head down like this. Stop it.
You just need the mic.
I just need the mic right in front of me, and just take all my coat, these braces, and then
Maybe a cigarette. Take it back
Oh,
a
that would
few
be nice,
years.
a cigar.
yeah, cigarette, and then and talk with a truncated New York accent because I moved to Florida a long time ago, and then LA, so it changed me.
Florida tends to do that to you, huh?
Yeah, it would.
No.
It would. That's why I've always stayed away.
Ooh, good point.
Yeah, I think Florida's very nice, but living there, I'm not sure.
No.
Yeah, not sure.
Yeah, because if you count the north of Florida is pretty nice.
Yeah,
More
the
sane.
coast, West Coast.
Duck.
Yeah, I mean, it's all nice, but in its own way. There's some great places on the East Coast.
Duck, yeah.
I don't want to alienate people from Florida. I like Florida. I've been there many times.
Everglades
Yeah.
City.
Everglades City.
Oh, no, yeah, it's a very nice city.
That's what. Is that on the Everglades by any chance?
Yes, it's there's one road in and one road out.
It's Old Town.
That's old
Yeah.
school. Yeah, that's called. Is that called the Gator Track or something? Yeah.
No, I think the DEA back in the day sat at the end of the road, and they went in and raided the entire town. It was one of the largest cocaine busts in the state of Florida.
Oh, really?
Wow. Yeah.
But fantastic kayaking in the mangroves. It's a really awesome place to go kayaking.
Yeah.
Everglades City.
Did you ever go to Lake Okeechobee?
I think I have.
Yeah, I used to go across. I had a job moving boats from St. Petersburg, Florida, to Fort Lauderdale. That was a tough job, and people would buy a boat, and I was working with a company. I would have to take them, and then sometimes go with the person. That wasn't that much fun
No.
because they're always angry because they don't know how the boat works. Really, they just had money and bought a boat, so they're angry the whole time. But anyway. But that was fun. It's a beautiful country, going down the Intercoastal Waterway, and you cross through Okeechobee. You would go down the Intercoastal Waterway on the west coast of Florida, cross through Lake Okeechobee, and you end up in the Intercoastal Waterway, and you head south to Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, that's nice.
And it's really, really pretty. Yeah. So you go right across Florida in this way, through using Lake Okeechobee.
I've only hit I-5.
It's navigable.
Navigable? I've only been down in Florida via I-5. That's all I know about Florida.
That's it?
Duck, haven't had a chance to go to Pensacola.
You mean
area.
I-95?
Yeah, 95, sorry, the
Yeah.
I-95 corridor. I-5 is on the west coast of the
Yeah, I was
place.
going to say that's
Yeah.
way over there. But I-95, yeah, it goes all the way. It goes all the way from Florida, from Miami, up to
Maine.
New Hampshire.
No, all the way to Maine. Duck.
It
all
goes
the way
to New
Maine.
Hampshire, where Patrick is not from. But let's move on now because we have a few things to talk about. I just thought it'd be nice to talk a little bit about. Well, then let's talk a little bit more about you. Where are you from originally?
Costa Rica.
And but in the United States,
Minnesota.
You mentioned Minnesota, which to me is an obvious change. You're in Costa Rica, weather's far too perfect, so you choose Minnesota.
Not by choice. My parents.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Your parents, yeah, they chose Minnesota. Well, good for them.
No, yeah, good for them. But for me, it was a really rude awakening.
Where in Costa Rica? Because I've been around Costa Rica.
Alajuela.
Huh?
Alajuela.
Where is that exactly?
That's a little bit north of San Jose. So if you know
Well,
where
San Jose, I was there.
Duck, if you know the
I
big
drove around.
so you know Volcan Poas, the big volcano, the dormant one. We're right at
okay.
the basin of it.
Yeah, because we went up and around all these windy roads. I was driving. It was a
You were?
crazy drive. Yeah.
You brave
Up
man.
to San Jose. Yeah. And I drove on the coast as well. There's full of potholes in Costa Rica.
You 4x4s have a hard time even making it to that.
Yeah, I was just like this the whole time, you know, weaving through.
It sounds like a Ukrainian road.
Well,
Yeah,
when I went
the
to
background
Ukraine, it
road.
was the closest I had seen since Costa Rica. When I drove there, yeah. I mean, a long time. And this is back in 2000, I don't know,
Oh,
8, 9, 2010.
that's not too far back, but
Yeah,
still,
well,
it hasn't
I mean,
changed much.
And yeah, for the youngsters, it's a long time ago. For the really youngsters. Last time we were on the show, so thanks for coming in the studio, and thanks for telling us that. The last time we were talking, you were both on the show. and Patrick was on his way to Kherson. So I think it's worth finding out what's been going on. Patrick, may I just do a little introduction before we start? That yesterday they were asking me how you get information in Ukraine and what's it like. I mean, the people I was talking to in this other show really don't know much about this part of the world. One was Chinese, one was from Taiwan, and the other was from, I believe, Colombia, but Latin American, somewhere in that area, central, northern Latin America, maybe Venezuela. But both located in America at this point. And they seemed rather interested in how reporters, it was reporters' forum, so they were interested in how reporters are covering this war. I said, well, it's difficult because since March and the beginning of the war, a lot of the major networks have moved their people out.
Yep.
And so you don't get a lot of coverage beyond what's European.
No.
You get a lot of commentators reading wire reports and things like that, or talking to politicians who go back and forth. But that's not really giving you don't look to politicians to give you reports about what's happening somewhere, nor ambassadors, not when they're in office. And so I was saying I get a lot of the information from reports, from a couple of different reports that circulate amongst those who can get them, and also from aid people on the ground. And then I mentioned you, Patrick, briefly, and your recent excursion. And I said, that's how we're getting our information. We're getting it from freelancers, basically, and from intelligence that is available to us. Obviously not the most top secret stuff. But what's your experience been like since we talked to you last, Patrick, with that brief introduction?
We didn't make it to Kherson. The groups that we were going in with, there was too much shelling. So we, the first day we went to Zakopilya, which is maybe about an hour and a half outside of Kivri, and spent time in an occupied village, a deoccupied village there, just with aid workers.
Can you give us a little more placement of where these places are? Like how far from Kiev, how far from Kherson, how close to the river, that sort of thing?
Zakopilya is maybe southwest of Kivri, which is, Kivri is about 2 hours south of Dnipro.
Okay.
So it's kind of one of the first small liberated villages in the Kherson Oblast, closest to Dnipronetsk Oblast. So we spent time at a senior center there with some really awesome, brave women who took a Ukrainian soldier that was injured and gave him refuge in the first part of the war. Ultimately, he was discovered. That's a pretty in-depth story. And then the next day we went into Berislav, which is on the Dnipro River, 70 kilometers south of Kherson. Berislav was one of the first points, first cities liberated before going into Kherson. So we took in Starlink and generators, and it was a pretty uneventful day, for lack of better words, for me visually, and from a storytelling component, it was I don't want to say boring, but there wasn't a lot going on. There weren't many people in the streets. Once we got everything unloaded into the center, we were just waiting. A lot of us were just waiting out by the car for Starlink to be online and start working. And out of nowhere, this loud whistle is screeching whistles coming right for us. And my first reaction is to scream, "Get down!" And I just remember running and jumping on someone and pushing them to the ground. And then the explosion went off. And then you stand up and you kind of gather all your your thoughts, and then another whistle's coming in. And so, ironically, I'm the only one in protective gear. So we were in a 3-car convoy. One of those cars was not with us. So we load up in our cars and we start to drive off. And we just make the first left from the center and we stop. And so there's 2 of us parked next to each other. And there's another loud screeching coming in and the explosion. The house next to us is smoldering. And all this time it was strange because you kind of replay it back in different pieces. But local residents are going about their normal day. People are still riding their bikes without pedaling faster. I remember the older woman coming out of the home next to the house that was burning and just kind of looking out like you would see a woman coming to the door because someone knocked on it. There was a child yelling at his parents because he wanted to be left alone to go play and do his own thing. And all this time, there's still more screeching coming in and mines exploding. So at that point, I'm kind of like, what in the hell are we doing? Like, why are we parked? Where are we going? I don't know the town. The people I was with knew the town. So at that point, I just threw my car in reverse and started driving down the street.
Did you see where this was coming from?
It was coming from Kafka, right across the river. So it's...
Did you see the type of munitions or the launcher?
Artillery?
Was it artillery or tank?
It was artillery.
Was artillery?
It was artillery.
Okay.
It was either coming from a tank or it was coming from, I guess, like a mine launcher. Or
motor. It's a motor launcher.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a motor. Probably either the 60 or the 130 that the Russians have, or 140, whatever the big size is. Was it a big explosion or a small explosion? It's significant. Yeah. Because it makes a difference.
It's interesting because once I got out of the neighborhood on the outskirts and looking in, they were pretty good smoke, rises of smoke. They were loud.
Okay, so it's the 140s.
The only explosions I'm used to are from drones and missiles, so they're really loud. But I just remember driving down the street in reverse as fast as I can, not knowing where I was going, but I was moving, and I just didn't want to be stationary. And then I threw the car in drive and started going back down the street, and finally the other car started to join me, and we drove out of the neighborhood. And as we were coming to the first military checkpoint, it was really funny because they went to stop us for our passports, and you can hear more coming in, blowing up in the distance, and then they just wave us through really quick. And every time those things are coming in, those guys lay flat in the mud, face first, head down. But once I felt more comfortable once I was not able to see the Dnipro River. And that was my only strategy is that when we first stopped, I kept pushing everybody to go further, kind of down this embankment so that we couldn't see the river. Because I feel like if we can see the river, people can see us. So when we got there in the morning, there was a heavy fog over the Dnipro. You could still see it. And then that fog cleared. And once it cleared, if I had binoculars, I could look over and see Russian soldiers across the river. It's a little bit less. I think it's a kilometer and a half, maybe, distance between Berislav and Kafkavka. So, there's a narrow opening at the end of the dead-end street, kind of with some woods, that you could have a clearing that I could see across the river and people across the river could see us. And so this was a concentrated shelling only in the area where we were. So I'm not sure if they were able to see across the river and notice us in a larger gathering of people, or if there were local collaborators. There are people moving about the neighborhood, which is something that you have to think about, like the people that you're speaking with. Word can quickly spread that there's an American. Word can quickly spread that there's a humanitarian drop going on. And there, without a doubt, are still collaborators in these deoccupied cities.
Interesting thing that he brings up collaborators, because
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
because these guys have been known in intelligence to be using their communications, whether they be given a radio or the cell phones, to communicate with the Russians on the other side. What he saw on the other side of the river was a motor mounted on the back of a tank, most likely a BMP-2. That is not a BMP that has a standard turret, but it's more of a motor-specific BMP. And they have those up and down.
What's a BMP?
It is a infantry fighting vehicle.
Okay.
So it's a basic troop carrier.
Because people might not know.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that sucks. So
Right.
definitely. So that's a troop carrier, but this is more retrofitted to, or modified to carry a 140 in the back. So that's what I was asking about the size of the explosion. And he said that he saw a tank on the backside. I'm like, okay, that makes more sense. Because you can put a 140 in a tank and be stable. A 160 would just be a waste. So you could put those in the back of a regular of a wheeled vehicle, but a tracked vehicle. What he saw was incredible. And I'm really surprised, because now he's saying that they could see across. You could see across 1.5K from where he was to the other side of the Dnieper River. They could easily see him.
Yeah. So my question was, do you think it was just that time of the day to fire off some rockets and upset people, or do you think it was directed on you? You can't really tell. But you kind of answered that.
You can't tell.
You kind of answered that with talking about somebody could have phoned over, and you don't know who's on the side on that. They must have left some people in place.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's standard TTPs.
Yeah.
I think that they were targeted because the way that he was telling me that he was moving back, and they were still continuing the rounds, they were trying to bracket him. Bracketing a person with motors is to try and get their position, so that way they can do what's called fire for effect, to completely destroy or completely kill the people that are on the ground.
Well, you just narrow the parameters, and then you pop in between, right?
And that's why there's certain amounts of volleys, like a certain time frame in between each one. Patrick, I'm actually interested. How much time was in between each motor or explosion round? Was it about 5 seconds?
The first one hit. I get up. Let's see. I run around the corner, run to.
Just a relative estimate.
Less than 10 seconds from the first to the second?
That's exactly what they're doing. Bracketing, yeah, because usually if they're a really good motor team, they can bracket you within about 30 seconds and then continue to fire for effect and if they see you maneuvering. And they can kind of guess where you're going because of the avenues of approach. So your avenue of approach was the road.
And then they cut you off.
Exactly.
And then they cut you, or they just destroy the area between the brackets.
Yeah, basically cornering
you. And you're caught
you
in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what they were. That's essentially what they were doing. So the last shelling in that town was at midnight, the day before.
Okay, we got to go now for a break.
Okay.
We'll take this up when we come back. More of There's a Will after these exciting messages. Please watch with interest. They're what keep us on the air. And we're back. We haven't moved a muscle, as you can see. During that entire break, we've been sitting here frozen, waiting to bring you the second half of the show. If we were outside, we'd really be frozen because we have snow.
Yes, we do, unfortunately.
In beautiful downtown Warsaw. And you had to drive here through the... This is the first snow of the year, really. It's a serious one, I think.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's hovering around 0 degrees, the worst sort of condition, right?
No.
It's slippery and sliding. People are not used to it yet.
Yeah, actually, I ran passed 3 accidents on the way down here. It's because people just don't know how to drive. They don't slow down. They just slam on their brakes. I'm like, don't do that. You
Pump those brakes.
Yes.
Keep plenty of distance between you and the car ahead. No sudden moves.
Doc, that's exactly what they don't do. It's like
No sudden moves.
they don't do sudden moves. They do sudden moves, actually. And I'm like, oh.
We'll go to somebody who's an expert in the snow to continue his story.
No.
A man from East Texas. His name is Patrick Patterson. He's in Kiev now.
Oh,
I
no.
bet they've got snow there. You got snow there?
No.
It's snowing right now.
Yeah, here too. Join the club. Christmas is a-coming. Don't be a Grinch. That's my advice to everyone out there. Don't be a Grinch like Mr. Putin. Now, yes, you wanted to say, you were saying to me in the break, I said, wait, let's talk on camera.
Yes, okay.
You had something to say to Patrick?
Yeah, Patrick, you were very, very lucky what they were doing and how you got out and you didn't wait. Most guys that wait, they will end up either getting severely hurt or injuring individuals because these were not your typical motor guys. These guys are experienced. So what they were doing, they were trying to cut you off immediately and pin you down. So your actions literally saved the entire convoy's life. So the amount, they were standard, they were not using not warheads like nuclear warheads, but the warheads, the actual warhead of the actual motor was not phosphorus, thank goodness. Phosphorus, if you guys know what white phosphorus is a very, very nasty.
It explodes and hits things and puts them on fire.
Doc, and incinerates. It's a basic incinerator, and that's, to me, it's inhumane. However, but war is inhumane
itself. It's like napalm in a sense.
Yes, but worse. But yeah, you're very lucky. They were a very experienced group. So what you did, kudos, because you saved yourself. That was very nice. Very good job.
Yeah, but we had people from the convoy that went back in.
What were they thinking?
Well, we were there to also evacuate an elderly man, and so when we got to where we were on the outskirts of town, one of the individuals who volunteered to go back, I gave him my tactical kit, a helmet, and a vest, and he turned around and drove back in. And so I set my timer on my phone just to know how long he was gone, because I know that under stressful circumstances, time can get lost. But he drove back in under artillery fire, and he remembers pulling up to this house, and there were these 2 kids standing on the side of the house, kind of spread eagle against the wall, like just hugging it with their backs. And he asked them where this person's home was, and they both at the same time were like, around the corner. And they just kind of hugged the wall again. And so he pulled up and grabbed the man and grabbed his belongings. And he said that right before he pulled up, a shell had landed, and there was just debris everywhere in the street, and he made it back. But so when he got back, I stopped my timer, and 12 minutes and 16 seconds is what it took for him to drive where we were, back into the neighborhood, grab his friend, and drive back out. So 12 minutes isn't that long to extract somebody. So we were still relatively close to the shelling. But yeah, it was, just add artillery shelling to the list of things flying at me on this journey. Drones, missiles, artillery. So it's a very different sound.
It's a very different war. What a lot of the people that don't understand is that this is not a unconventional war. You're fighting a conventional foe that is using unconventional means. These guys are going to be continuing to do unconventional means that are atrocities for us here in the West that we can't even imagine. So the one thing that is also very hard for people to understand is that their own countrymen are turning against them. And that's the one thing that the Ukrainians have to prepare for and look out for. So keep your head on a swivel at all times when you're going over there towards areas that are still occupied every single time, especially when we're going to near the Dnipro River, especially on the east side of the Dnipro River. You have to have your head on a swivel, not only in front of you, but upwards, because they will be using drones that are not only supplied by them by Iranians, but they're also supplied by another BRIC countries that are there.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I feel like I definitely left myself open and exposed, being on the street that I was, that I could see across the river. I think in hindsight, just being out of that view, and I think part of that is in the beginning you couldn't see it because it was so heavily fogged. And then as the afternoon got later, it lifted, and then I still remember people saying,
how long were you there, Patrick, in this particular area? You say the fog, there was fog, and then it lifted. What kind of time are we talking about, and how big was the convoy?
We had 3 cars.
Okay. And
3 hours at most.
You were there in the same place 3 hours. So
Yeah.
you were lucky that it was fog, or they would have just taken your cars out if you weren't in them.
Yeah, they would have seen you
Yes.
coming kilometers away, because they do have the binoculars and the people already telling them that they're there, but they can't see you. So yeah, well, you're right. When fog lifts, you're done.
we had people on the street that my Ukrainian is not strong enough to hold an educated conversation with someone. I can give someone directions, but we had people who were asking us, what's going on in Kyiv, what's going on in other parts of Ukraine, because these people haven't had any connection with the outside world, right? And I remember one person that was talking to us for maybe 10 minutes before this happened, probably a 10-minute conversation. Then after that conversation, this happened. I quickly thought about that man being potentially a collaborator. When we were on the outskirts of town,
Why? Why?
It's just a gut feeling.
What was he saying to you, or what
No,
were the signals?
He was just asking questions about what's going on in Kyiv, what's going on in Kharkiv, what's going on in just different parts of Ukraine. Just because these people haven't had any access to information from the outside world. Some of these people at the center that we were at, when Starlink finally turned on at one point, they turned it back off for a little bit, but they made phone calls for the first time in 9 months.
Yes, that makes sense, that people would be normally curious. But what made you think somebody might be a collaborator by what they were saying to you or asking you?
It was just a gut feeling.
It was just the cut of their jib. Something made you think this isn't, they're a little too interested, or their eyes, look in their eyes.
I'm not the one holding the conversation, so...
I see what you mean. You're observing the...
Yeah,
okay.
I'm just observing. And then when we were on a little outskirts of town, a man stopped and just started speaking with us, just kind of randomly asking questions. He said that he left his neighborhood to kind of get out of the shelling. But even with him, I also thought, oh man, is this a collaborator? Is this someone that is going to?
It's called war paranoia. I know the feeling.
It's called always.
I know
listening
that
to your gut.
Antony knows it.
Oh yes.
Being in the former special services guy.
I don't know if it's paranoia. I think it's
weary. You're just very weary of anybody.
Yeah. Very wary.
I think it's you just trying to use every tool you have in your toolbox to allow you to safely leave the area.
Did you actually have a toolbox? Just kidding.
I do.
That was very dry. You brought a toolbox with you, and
No.
and then you have to decide which tool to use when you're conversing with someone, or
yes.
talking, conversing
Yes.
or talking. Or
Absolutely.
jabbering.
All the time.
I jabber a lot, as everyone knows who watches this show. But I think it's interesting. I mean, I've been on jobs where I had a toolbox, but that was because I needed tools, actual physical tools. What you're talking about in this case is metaphorical tools.
100%.
That's like when people say reach out. They don't really mean they reach out to someone and grab them, or they actually physically reach out. What they mean is they want to talk to them or get in contact, right?
We can start talking about idioms and using idioms in Ukraine. It's fabulous.
It doesn't work half the time.
How do you feel when you're? I think a lot of people. I know that a lot of people are interested in this because they've been asking me about it. What it's like on the front for people who don't speak Ukrainian. Either one of you could answer this, or Russian. How do you feel in these difficult situations when you don't speak the language and you cannot, speak directly to someone?
It's hard, really. I mean, but it's they have just a general understanding of what you're there to do, because they really know that you're a foreigner. What are you doing in Ukraine? Okay, that's obvious. We're there to help. So they're really more keen to actually listen. And if they don't understand, they'll tell you. It's like, whoa, hold on. Of course, in Ukrainian, but it's.
But how do you feel though, knowing that they can speak to each other and you can't? You're outside, and what is it? Because I used to think Polish sounded like zhush, 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 zhush.
Yeah, but
and it gave me a headache.
But
it was like a radio frequency you can't tune into.
It doesn't really faze or bother me, because you just have to have your wits about yourself, regardless, no matter what. You have to trust yet verify anything, no matter what. Yeah. But then you just start to learn whom you can trust or whom you can sort of rely and put more faith in them. But you still have to be risk averse about them.
Right, because you were in Afghanistan.
Both Iraq and Afghanistan.
And Iraq, and in situations
much
where
more.
you had to depend on interpreters.
Yep.
I've been in situations where you have to depend on interpreters.
Tak.
Obviously.
Hell, let alone you have to depend on, sometimes the situations I was put in, you have to depend on the ANTONY guys, so the Special Forces of Afghanistan that we trained, because they're the ones that were going to do the missions, and we were just there to verify their missions.
Yeah. Yeah. Patrick, back to you.
I think you can understand. It's interesting because a lot of times I think the people who I'm around, they look at me and they ask me what government agency I'm working for from the United States, because I will sometimes finish their sentences. And I feel like I understand more Ukrainian than I can speak it. But also just in general context, I think that you can, where you are, you can lose a lot of key details, but you have an understanding of what's going on.
No.
You have an understanding of, you can communicate in some basic ways. But I feel like I understand more what's going on. I feel like I without a doubt, I know more Ukrainian than I do Spanish now. And so it's something that I felt that was important.
You must be a really, I can't decide from that statement whether you're a really slow learner or a really fast learner.
Or when I had opportunities to learn my Spanish,
right.
That's the point. Didn't care, right?
Yeah, like, exactly. Yeah, but
now he has to.
I was in Nicaragua. I didn't learn any Spanish. I can read it, but I can't. I can't speak very much. Yeah.
I mean, I gave someone directions the other day. It was awesome.
Wow. You know that you're getting somewhere when you can do that, right?
I knew. Yeah. He said Novus, and I know that the Novus is the grocery store, and I knew where it was. And I was, Prejemo, Liveroch, tak. And he was like, Chakuyu, Pulaska.
Chakuyu, what does that mean? What does Chakuyu mean?
Chakuyu? Thank you. Pulaska.
Chakuyu. Instead of...
Dziękuję. It's
Dziękuję is Polish.
Tak. And Dziękuję is...
Right, my producer, what is... Dziękuję and Dziękuję.
Dziękuję.
My producer, line producer in the Raphael is telling me in my ear. That's why I wear this. Only for this reason. That's the only thing he said to me the whole time. Helping us with our pronunciation. Poor Patrick. Yeah. Patrick, we're very glad that you're alive. No. I want you to know that.
Yeah, me too.
Because before you ever came out here, we had a conversation at least once, didn't we, about war zones and when you were still in New Hampshire, wherever it is you pretend to be living now.
You're from, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's all, bad shit can happen to you anywhere. And
well, that's true. Yeah, that is true.
And it's a game of odds, right? And
life is a gamble.
You have to make the best decisions that you can, and trust people and trust your gut. I could have gotten killed going to the airport coming to Ukraine. So you know, it
walking
is what
down
it
the
is.
wrong street in Manhattan after a few drinks. You know, the wrong time of night. Any time after midnight. Yeah. What's the scariest experience that you can tell us about that you've had,
Mine?
Tony? Yeah.
Actually, it wasn't even in Afghanistan or Iraq, actually. It was actually in the States.
Really?
Doc, yeah, it was actually when I was working in Pennsylvania. There's extremely high racism in Pennsylvania, and just riding my bike and just going to a gas station in the middle of BFE, and the guy was literally looking at me, just staring me down. And
BFD is broad effing daylight.
yeah, in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
literally middle of nowhere, because it was 65 miles outside from where I lived, because I lived in, shoot, I can't remember the little town, because it was a really good bike shop too, and I just lived up there. Anyways, it doesn't matter, but 65 miles from my house, and yeah, no kidding, right there, the guy comes out and pulls a gun on me, says, "You better get out of here, boy."
Really?
I'm like, the heck, I'm in Pennsylvania, for God's sake. I'm like, what am I doing here? It's like, I'm here to buy water. You better turn around, boy. You're in the wrong town.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. So
Yeah, but Patrick gets that in his adopted hometown too, because he's from Texas. He's in New Hampshire, so he gets it too.
no,
Especially the boy part.
no. I'm just like, really? I mean,
That's
it's like
terrible.
No,
I mean,
no.
you have to laugh at a certain point.
Doc, I was laughing on the way
Yeah.
back home after I was like,
It's
God.
just so crazy.
No.
There are a lot of unhinged people.
No, exactly.
And this is the problem. And believe me, anyone can run into an unhinged person. And you don't know what they're going to fasten on to about you that they don't like. And there's a lot of it about, and a lot of them have guns these days. Or knives in this part of the world or in England.
True. No, in England, true.
Do not ever. You know what the old famous thing from, what's his name, the guy who disappeared? Hoffa, Jimmy Hoffa said, it's in this movie by Martin Scorsese, the latest movie with Al Pacino. I forget the name of it. The Irishman. I remembered finally. Very good movie. Very slow, very deliberate, but great movie. And the character of Hoffa says, how do you say? He says, you Russian, you rush a gun, you run from a knife. You rush a gun, you run from a knife. Yeah, it's Al Pacino saying that, yeah?
No, actually, yeah.
So if they got a knife, get the heck out of there. But if they got a gun, you can rush them if they're close, yeah? But a knife is going to tear you up. All they got to do is just like that is the idea. Knives are more dangerous than guns in close
because you can
combat.
conceal them, Doc.
Yeah, that's the point. And close in.
Yeah, because it's you have more milliseconds to rush a gun because it takes them time to pull it out and squeeze the trigger, and then a knife is in the hand.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was what he said. But yeah, what about Patrick? Have you been swapping stories with people in Kiev about what's going on, about the situation there now? What's going on? Because we're running down to time. Just can you give us a brief on the situation there now?
Yeah, we went a week without missile attacks here. So I think the city of Kyiv now has made a statement. If it gets below -5 Celsius, and then there's an attack, they will drain the pipes so that they don't break, and which means that they probably won't turn back on, which means no running water or sewage in Kyiv. They're setting up in metro stations, bathrooms, places to get water, charge your phone. They'll have Wi-Fi, and I guess so-called warming stations. But I think the temperature they said would be like 15 degrees Celsius in the metro stations, and there's an unknown time limit on when that water supply would come back. So I think it would be down for the winter time. So there's new reports coming out that Russia's not going to send missiles in until whether it gets below that temperature, and then they'll start their attacks again. But they're just waiting on the temperature to get lower.
Tony, you want to comment?
Yeah, I'm actually curious about the power, Are they using the generators, or are they actually diverting power only to the power stations that are located at the subways? And one thing about the missiles is, don't believe the reports about the Russians not going to be waiting for that time, or waiting till that time frame. They will continue to do it. That's just what they want you to do.
Yeah.
That's just their, what is it called, their rhetoric.
My guess is they'd be using generators.
No, that's what I thought. Yeah, because it was interesting.
Yeah.
It's just I'm not sure. When
Do you know what kind of generators they're using down there? Because there has to be an industrial-sized generator that's already hidden down there, or that they built into it and brought it down.
I don't know, not in the metro stations. Like gas stations now have large commercial-sized generators set up on their property.
Is that to keep the pumps running and things like that?
Yes.
Keep the pumps running. Yeah, this reminds me, I mean, it sounds very similar to London of the World War II, where people went into the undergrounds because of air raids. Anybody who's seen a movie about that time or made in that time knows about that. And there are, we go back to saying there's a lot of World War II motifs. A lot of the artillery being used by the Russians is...
Yeah.
Take over?
Yeah, Doc, thank you. You reminded me about that. A lot of the Russia is running out of munitions, and they're actually now starting to rely on the old stockades.
Right.
So the old stockpiles that they're running into, the munitions that they have are extremely unstable. So actually it's a benefit for us, but at the same time not. Because you don't know whether or not it's going to fire when it hits, or if it explodes on them. Great, that's awesome. That's good for us.
It might just lie on the ground and not explode and be waiting to explode, so it's an extra kind of landmine.
Exactly.
Or something.
And that's good.
Or it lodges in a building and sits there.
Oh God, yeah, I know that's the worst thing, because kids, people and kids are still going to be around that, and that is a good caveat, because there's an organization that is trying to get funding from the U.S. and from Ukraine to set it, because they're specific specialists. So these guys are getting there, and I forget their names. Forgive me. Bomb Techs Without Borders, and they're old UXO guys that are from all the walks of life in the DoD, but they are specialized. They're the only ones that are doing that right now, that are working with Ukrainians, teaching Ukrainians. They're teaching the police, they're teaching the MOD, and they're continuing to teach the MOI. And it's critical that we help these guys and get more people like them in there, because the mines that the Russians laid out, unexploded ordnance that is all over the fields, people are just walking around, and that's where we see a lot more injuries happening, is because of that type of explosion.
Yeah. So
on our way.
Okay, we got to wrap it up. We got 30 seconds, Patrick. Go ahead.
Yeah, there were civilians walking in the fields trying to pick up souvenirs from exploded tanks, and the people we were traveling with, they pull the cars over, they get out, and they call them over, and they're like, "What in the heck? Like get out of the fields! Like you're gonna kill yourself!" Like there's these mines are gonna these crop fields have turned into minefields. And it's going to be like that. So for every day of war is an added month of demining for this war.
Wow. That is a good place to end. That was a very good point. Thank you, Patrick, for joining us. Patrick Patterson, photographer, journalist, photojournalist from Kiev. Also, you've kind of jumped into the aid business as well, haven't you? So thanks for doing that, aiding NGOs. And thank you for your photographs from the front. And stay well, Patrick, my old friend. Okay, Antonio. Antonio. Anthony, my newer friend. Handshake. Thanks. Okay. Thanks for coming in, Anthony McFarlane Gonzalez. Thank you, Patrick Patterson, once again, and thank you for watching. This has been There's a Will, the premier talk show of its kind, which is definitely different in Central Europe, and we appreciate you watching. So, I forgot to say, you're looking well. Why don't you stay that way?